I am Marisol, 32, an art teacher at Westfield High in Boston. For 8 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage with Eric, my marketing executive husband. Our life seemed picture perfect with our art studio Sunday brunches and plans for the future. But yesterday, when I took Eric's cracked phone for repair while he was on a business trip, everything changed. The technician's face went pale as he looked at the screen. "Ma'am, cancel your cards and change your locks, now." Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? Hit the like button and subscribe to hear what happened next. Eric and I met at my friend Tasha's gallery opening 10 years ago. I was finishing my Master of Fine Arts degree showcasing some of my paintings alongside other emerging artists. Eric approached me near one of my pieces, a vibrant abstract that explored themes of hope and new beginnings. The irony of that doesn't escape me now. "The contrast between the cool blues and warm reds is fascinating," he said, studying my painting with genuine interest. "It creates such tension, yet somehow feels balanced." His understanding of my work impressed me immediately. Most people at these events made small talk or generic compliments, but Eric actually engaged with the art. He was tall, with warm brown eyes, and a smile that made everyone around him feel special. Our connection was instant. We talked for hours that night, long after most guests had left. He told me about his work in marketing, his love for architecture, his dreams of traveling the world. I shared my passion for teaching art to young people, my small studio apartment filled with canvases, my collection of vintage paintbrushes. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. At the 1-year mark, Eric proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. The wedding was everything I had dreamed of, a garden ceremony with 150 guests, my hand-painted details on everything from invitations to table settings. We bought our house in Newton 3 years ago, a charming colonial with enough space for my art studio in the sunroom and a guest bedroom for when my parents visited from Arizona. The neighborhood was perfect: families, walking dogs, block parties in summer, excellent schools for the children we planned to have. Eric's career at Meridian Marketing took off quickly. He became their youngest director last year, managing accounts for several national brands. His colleagues admired his creative strategies, and clients loved his personable approach. Work dinners and networking events became regular parts of our schedule, and I watched proudly as he charmed rooms full of industry professionals. My own career brought me fulfillment in different ways. Teaching art at Westfield High School allowed me to mentor talented teenagers, encouraging them to find their voice through creativity. Several of my students had gone on to prestigious art schools, sending me grateful emails about how I had changed their trajectory. My own artwork continued in the evenings and weekends with small local exhibitions a few times a year. Our social life revolved around dinner parties at our home, where I would cook elaborate meals and Eric would select perfect wine pairings. Our friends Laura and David, Jenna and Paul, and my sister Julia with her husband Mark were regular guests. These evenings would stretch late into the night, filled with laughter, deep conversations, and occasional heated debates about politics or art. "You two are relationship goals," Laura would often say, watching Eric help me clear dishes, or the way he would rest his hand on the small of my back. For our 5th anniversary, Eric surprised me with a trip to Paris. We spent days wandering museums, eating at tiny bistros, and shopping in charming boutiques. One evening, standing on a bridge over the Seine at sunset, Eric wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "I think it's time we start our family, don't you?" The idea thrilled me. I had always wanted children, and at 31 the timing seemed perfect. When we returned home, I stopped taking birth control. We transformed the guest room into a potential nursery in our minds, occasionally browsing baby furniture online and discussing names. My sister Julia had 2 children already, 4-year-old Emma and 2-year-old Lucas. Eric was wonderful with them, getting down on the floor to build block towers or reading stories with silly voices. Watching him, I could easily imagine him as a father to our own children. "Your husband is a gem," my friend Amanda told me during one of our coffee dates. "The way he looks at you still after all these years, it's rare." And it was true. When Eric looked at me across a crowded room, I still felt that flutter in my chest, that sense of being the luckiest woman in the world. Our disagreements were minor: which restaurant to try for dinner, whether to replace the living room furniture, whose family to visit for holidays. Nothing that couldn't be resolved with compromise and understanding. At least that's what I believed until yesterday. Looking back, I can see the signs were there. The red flags I ignored or explained away, too trusting to acknowledge the truth that was unfolding right before my eyes. The work trips increased about 6 months ago. Previously, Eric traveled maybe once a month for client meetings or industry conferences. Suddenly, it became every other weekend, sometimes extending to 3 or 4 days. The Chicago client is demanding, he would explain, or the Seattle presentation needs personal attention. I never questioned these explanations. His dedication to work was something I had always admired. Then came the password changes. We had always shared our phone passwords, not because we snooped on each other, for practicality. If his phone was charging and mine was dead, I could use his to order takeout or check the weather. One day I picked up his phone to look up a recipe we had talked about, and the familiar pattern no longer worked. "Oh, company security protocol," Eric said smoothly when I asked. Everyone had to create complex new passwords. "I'll write it down for you." But somehow he never did. His appearance began to change too. New, more expensive clothes appeared in his closet: tailored suits, designer watches, shoes from brands I knew we couldn't comfortably afford on our salaries. He joined an exclusive gym downtown, spending evenings there after work, and returning home later and later. "Just trying to stay healthy," he said when I commented on his new fitness routine. "The stress at work means I need to take care of myself." The late-night texts became a regular occurrence. His phone would buzz at 11 midnight, sometimes later. Eric would glance at it, his expression unreadable, then excuse himself to answer in the hallway or bathroom. When he returned, he would offer a casual explanation. "Just David asking about fantasy football," or "work emergency with the Tokyo client." The explanations were plausible, but something in his tone made my stomach tighten with uncertainty. Then there were the mysterious calls. Eric would step outside onto our back deck to take them even in the cold of winter. Through the kitchen window, I would watch him pace back and forth, gesturing animatedly, his face alternating between smiles and serious expressions. When he came back inside, cheeks flushed from cold, he would say it was his boss or a difficult client. Our intimacy began to wane. Kisses became perfunctory sex, less frequent. If I reached for him in bed, he was often too tired or stressed about the upcoming presentation. When we did make love, it felt mechanical, lacking the connection we once shared. I began to wonder if it was me, if I had become less attractive to him somehow. At a company holiday party last December, I met Sophia, a new marketing analyst who had joined Meridian. She was beautiful, confident, and in her late 20s. Eric introduced us with a casual, "Oh, this is Sophia, she's been helping on the Chicago account." But I noticed how his hand lingered on her shoulder, how their inside jokes excluded everyone around them. "Eric has been such a mentor," Sophia told me, her perfect smile never reaching her eyes. "We've been working late so many nights on this campaign." That night I asked Eric about her. "She seems very close to you." "Don't start that," he said, his tone suddenly harsh. "She's a colleague, nothing more. I'm not having this conversation." It was the first time Eric had ever spoken to me that way, dismissive and cold. I retreated, apologizing for my suspicions, blaming my insecurity. The money issues began subtly. Our joint checking account would have less than I expected when bills came due. When I mentioned it, Eric assured me he had transferred funds to our investment portfolio. "We need to think long-term," he explained. "These opportunities won't last forever." But when I asked to see the investment statements, he would change the subject or promise to show me later when he had time to explain the complex strategy properly. That time never came. One Sunday morning, while Eric was showering, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Glancing over, I saw a text preview from someone named S saying, "Miss you already. Last night was..." The rest was hidden. When I asked him casually who S was, his face darkened momentarily before he composed himself. "Probably Sam from accounting," he said. "We're working on the quarterly reports." That afternoon, I checked our cell phone bill online. There were hundreds of texts to a number I didn't recognize, often late at night or during his supposed business trips. I didn't confront him. I was too afraid of what I might learn, too afraid of breaking the perfect image of our marriage I had constructed. My anxiety grew. I lost weight, had trouble sleeping, found myself checking his location on my phone throughout the day. My friend Amanda noticed the change in me. "Marisol, you don't seem like yourself," she said during our lunch. "Is everything okay with you and Eric?" I assured her everything was fine, unwilling to voice my fears even to my closest friend. Saying the words out loud would make them real, and I wasn't ready for that reality. But the doubts continued to multiply. The growing distance between us, the vague explanations, the defensive reactions whenever I asked innocent questions about his day or his colleagues. Something was wrong, but I kept telling myself I was imagining things, being paranoid, ruining our relationship with unfounded suspicions. How I wish I had trusted my instincts sooner. Last Friday started like any ordinary day. I woke early to prepare for my classes, planning a lesson on Mexican folk art for my sophomore students. Eric was rushing to pack for yet another trip to Chicago, tossing clothes into his suitcase with unusual carelessness. 3 days this time," he said, checking his watch repeatedly. "Major presentation for the new client." I noticed he was taking his best suits, his expensive cologne, even the diamond cufflinks I had given him for our 5th anniversary. A lot of effort for a business meeting, but I pushed the thought away. As he was checking his travel documents, his phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto our hardwood floor. The screen shattered instantly, spiderweb cracks making it almost impossible to read. "Damn it," Eric cursed, picking it up and frantically trying to use it. This couldn't happen at a worse time. I saw an opportunity to be helpful, to show him I was still the supportive wife he had married. "Let me take it to get repaired while you're gone," I offered. "That shop on Maple Street can usually turn them around in a day or two." His reaction was strange. He clutched the phone tighter, his knuckles whitening. "No, that's okay. I'll just use my work phone for now and deal with this when I get back." "Don't be silly," I insisted. "You need your personal phone. I have nothing going on after school today. I'll drop it off and have it fixed by the time you return." Eric hesitated, something like panic flashing in his eyes before he carefully composed his expression. "It's password protected. They won't be able to do anything without it." "So give me the password," I said, confused by his reluctance. "It's just a phone repair." After several more excuses, he finally relented. His Uber was waiting and he didn't have time to argue. He scribbled the 6-digit code on a sticky note. "Fine, but make sure they're reputable. There's confidential work stuff on there." He handed me the phone, reluctantly reminding me twice to be careful with it. I kissed him goodbye, watching through the window as his Uber pulled away. The worried look on his face as he glanced back at our house should have been another warning sign. After my classes ended that afternoon, I drove to Phone Fix on Maple Street. It was a small shop wedged between a coffee place and a dry cleaner, with bright blue signage and display cases showing the latest phone accessories. I had been there once before when my own screen had cracked last year. The bell jingled as I pushed open the door. Behind the counter was a young man in his 20s with dark hair pulled into a small ponytail and a name tag that read Jake. He was helping another customer, so I browsed the phone cases while waiting my turn. "How can I help you today?" Jake asked when the other customer left. I placed Eric's phone on the counter. "My husband's phone. The screen is completely shattered, as you can see." Jake picked it up, examining the damage. "Yeah, that's pretty bad. We can replace the screen, no problem. It'll be about $200, and I can have it ready by tomorrow afternoon." "That would be perfect," I said, relieved it could be fixed so quickly. "I'll just need to check that everything else is working properly before we proceed," Jake explained. "Can you unlock it for me?" I entered the passcode Eric had given me. The phone unlocked, and Jake began his standard diagnostic process, checking that the speaker's microphone and buttons were all functioning despite the cracked screen. As Jake navigated through basic functions, His expression suddenly changed. His previously friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by something I couldn't quite identify. His face paled, and he glanced up at me with what looked like pity in his eyes. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Jake seemed to struggle internally, looking from the phone to me and back again. Finally, he turned the phone face down on the counter and leaned forward. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice deadly serious, "I don't normally get involved in customers' personal lives, but you need to cancel your credit cards and change your locks, now." I stared at him uncomprehending. "What are you talking about?" "Your husband?" Jake hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "When I was checking the phone functions, notifications appeared. I wasn't trying to snoop, but what I saw," he trailed off. "What did you see?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, despite the sudden racing of my heart. Jake looked around the empty store, then back at me. "I think you should see for yourself." Jake turned the phone around, his expression grave as he handed it back to me. "There's a hidden folder," he explained, navigating to a seemingly innocent calculator app. "It's actually a secret storage app. When you open it and enter a different password, it shows hidden content." I watched in confusion as he demonstrated entering a code different from my husband's normal password. The calculator transformed, revealing a collection of messaging apps I'd never seen before. "I noticed it because I used something similar to protect my personal photos," Jake explained. "But what's inside? Ma'am, I think you need to see this." With trembling hands, I took the phone. The first app contained multiple dating profiles, all with Eric's photos, but under different names: Alexander Williams, David Porter, Michael Thomas. Each profile described him as single, wealthy, and looking for meaningful connections. "This can't be right," I whispered, more to myself than to Jake. The second folder contained conversations with at least a dozen women. Flirtatious messages, intimate photos, detailed plans for meetups. I scrolled through them, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. But the most devastating discovery was in the third folder, a collection of photos of Eric with the same woman in what appeared to be an apartment I'd never seen. In some photos, they were embracing on a couch. In others, having dinner at a candlelit table. The most recent ones showed them looking at baby clothes, the woman's pregnant belly clearly visible. "Seattle," I murmured, recognizing a distinctive building in the background of one photo. His trips weren't to Chicago. Jake awkwardly cleared his throat. "There's more," he said gently. "Email confirmations. I found them airline tickets to Seattle, not Chicago. Hotel reservations for the first few business trips, then lease agreements for an apartment." The name on the lease was Eric's, along with someone named Diane Lawson. Next came bank statements showing large transfers from our joint accounts to a private one I knew nothing about. Over the past 6 months, nearly $200,000 had been moved over one small transfer at a time to avoid raising suspicions. The final blow was an email from a real estate agent dated just 3 days ago. "Eric, I've prepared the listing agreement for your Newton property as discussed. Once signed, we can put the house on the market immediately. The divorce filing paperwork is also attached for your review." My legs gave out. Jake quickly came around the counter, helping me to a small chair in the corner of the shop. "I'm so sorry," he said, genuine concern in his eyes. "I debated whether to show you, but if my wife was being deceived like this, I'd want someone to tell her." "He was going to sell our house," I managed to say, my mind struggling to process the enormity of the betrayal. "While I was still living in it," Jake nodded grimly. "And the bank transfers I saw, they're accelerating. There was a scheduled transfer for next Tuesday that would empty your joint savings account." "How did you see all this so quickly?" I asked, still in shock. "The notifications were coming in real time," Jake explained. "Messages from the real estate agent, from this Diane person from the bank. When I swiped to clear them, I saw the hidden apps. I repair phones all day, I can tell when something's off." I sat in silence for several minutes, my entire world collapsing around me. 8 years of marriage, all the future plans we'd made, the children we'd planned to have, all of it built on lies. "What should I do?" I asked, surprised by the hollow sound of my own voice. Jake's answer was practical and immediate. "First, protect yourself financially. Go straight to your bank today. Cancel joint credit cards, secure your personal accounts. Then change your home locks and security codes. Based on what I've seen, your husband is planning to clean you out and disappear. He wrote down his personal number on the back of a business card. I'll fix the phone, my shift ends at 9. Call me if you need anything, even just someone to talk to. And please be careful. Men who live double lives like this, they can be dangerous when exposed. I thanked him, clutching the phone with its shattered screen that somehow mirrored my shattered life. As I walked to my car, I felt numb, moving on autopilot. The sunny afternoon seemed obscenely cheerful in contrast to the darkness that had just descended on my life. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with everything I had just discovered. The perfect life I thought I had was nothing but an elaborate facade. As I pulled into our driveway, I couldn't help but wonder how many other things in my life were lies. The house looked the same from the outside. The blue door we had painted together, the flower beds I had carefully planted with tulips and daffodils. But now it felt like a stage set a prop in the performance of Eric's perfect married life. Inside, I went straight to Eric's home office. If what Jake had shown me was true, there would be more evidence. I had never searched through Eric's things before. We had always respected each other's privacy. That thought made me laugh bitterly now as I pulled open his desk drawers. The first 2 drawers contained nothing unusual: office supplies, old receipts, product manuals. But the bottom drawer was locked. I had never noticed that before, or if I had, I hadn't thought anything of it. Now it seemed ominous. Where would Eric hide a key? I looked under the desk, behind the drawers, in his pen holder. Nothing. Then I remembered his collection of hardcover books on the shelf, antique editions he had been collecting for years. Behind The Great Gatsby, I found a small key taped to the back of the bookshelf. My hands shook as I unlocked the drawer. Inside was a manila folder labeled Personal Documents. I spread the contents across his desk, each paper revealing another piece of the puzzle. The first document was a life insurance policy. Eric had increased the coverage to $1 million last year, but had changed the beneficiary from me to someone named Diane Lawson, the same name from the apartment lease. Next were applications for new credit cards in Eric's name only, with a mailing address in Seattle. He had been approved for credit limits totaling over $50,000. I found statements showing recent large purchases, furniture, electronics, jewelry from stores in Seattle. The rental agreement for the Seattle apartment was there too, complete with both Eric's and Diane's signatures. It was a 2-bedroom unit in an upscale building with a 2-year lease that had begun 3 months ago. Then came the photos, the physical versions of what I had seen on the phone, plus more. Eric and a beautiful redhead on a boat at restaurants, in what appeared to be their Seattle apartment. In the most recent photos, dated just 2 weeks ago, her pregnancy was unmistakable. According to a sonogram image tucked between the photos, she was 7 months along. The final blow was a stack of handwritten letters from Eric to Diane dating back over a year. I forced myself to read one dated 6 months ago. My love, Diane. Only a few more months until we can be together permanently. Managing 2 lives has been exhausting, but worth it to build our future. Marisol suspects nothing. She's too trusting, too absorbed in her teaching and art, to notice what's happening right under her nose. The financial preparations are almost complete. By summer, I'll have moved enough assets to set us up comfortably, and the property division in the divorce will be minimized. I've consulted a lawyer who specializes in hiding assets during divorce proceedings. Marisol will be left with little, but that's not our concern. Our baby deserves everything we can provide, and soon we'll be a real family. I love you both, more than I ever thought possible. Forever, yours, Eric. The coldness of his words made me physically ill. I rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before I vomited. As I rinsed my mouth afterward, I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed like a stranger, pale, shell-shocked, with dark circles forming under her eyes. My phone rang, startling me. It was my sister Julia. "Hey, just checking in," she said cheerfully. "We haven't talked in a few days. How are you?" I broke down, telling her everything between sobs. The phone repair, Jake's warning, the evidence I had found. There was a long silence before Julia spoke again. Marisol, I need to tell you something. I saw Eric with a red-headed woman at Logan Airport 3 weeks ago. They were intimate, holding hands, kissing. I told myself it couldn't be him, that I was mistaken. I didn't want to hurt you without being certain. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, anger briefly overriding my pain. I took a photo from a distance, Julia admitted. I was going to show you to ask if it could possibly be Eric. But then he called me the next day out of the blue. He said he'd heard I was having financial troubles and offered to lend me money. It felt, I don't know, like a bribe or a threat. I convinced myself I was overreacting, that the man I saw just looked like Eric. I asked her to send me the photo. When it arrived, there was no doubt Eric and Diane at the airport, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. After hanging up with Julia, I called my bank. The customer service representative confirmed my worst fears. The balance in our joint savings account was just under $5,000, though it should have been closer to $200,000. Our joint checking account had $3,200. When I asked about recent transactions, she listed dozens of withdrawals and transfers over the past few months, all authorized with Eric's signature. I drove to the bank, immediately meeting with a manager who helped me freeze the joint accounts and secure my personal account, which fortunately Eric didn't have access to. It contained my teaching salary, about $42,000, a modest amount, but at least something he couldn't touch. Next, I called our credit card companies. I discovered new cards I knew nothing about, with balances totaling over $30,000. Purchases in Seattle, charges at jewelry stores, high-end restaurants, furniture deliveries. I reported the fraud and had my name removed from the accounts. With my immediate financial concerns addressed as best they could be, I called my friend Amanda. She had always been my emotional rock, the person I turned to in difficult times. "Can you come over?" I asked, not bothering to hide the desperation in my voice. Amanda arrived 30 minutes later, rushing through the door and enveloping me in a hug. As we sat in my kitchen, I showed her everything I had discovered. Her face grew increasingly troubled. Then she said something that shattered me all over again. "Marisol, I need to be honest with you. I saw Eric with another woman months ago at the Charles Hotel. They were having dinner, looking very involved. I followed them to the elevator. They were kissing as the doors closed." "You knew," I whispered, feeling betrayed all over again. "I confronted him the next day," Amanda admitted, tears in her eyes. "He swore it was a work colleague, that I had misinterpreted an innocent goodbye. He said he was planning a surprise for your anniversary and made me promise not to ruin it by telling you my mistaken suspicions. He was so convincing, Marisol. I wanted to believe him for your sake." I felt myself crumbling, the weight of all these betrayals too heavy to bear. Not just Eric, but my friends, my sister, all keeping secrets from me, all deceived by the man I had trusted completely. As the evening sun cast long shadows across my kitchen floor, I finally accepted the truth. My marriage, my future, the life I had so carefully built, it was all gone, destroyed by the systematic deception of the man I had loved. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. I also contacted a security company to change the codes for our alarm system. By noon, the house was secured against the man who legally co-owned it. I had barely slept, spending most of the night going through our financial records and making a list of everything I needed to protect or recover. The mortgage statement revealed another shock: we were 2 months behind on payments. Eric had been intercepting the notices, keeping me in the dark while diverting our money elsewhere. At 2 o'clock, I had an emergency appointment with Diana Patel, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague at school. She listened grimly as I laid out everything I had discovered. "This is one of the most calculated cases of marital fraud I've seen," she said, taking detailed notes. "The good news is that we have solid evidence of his deception and financial misconduct. The bad news is that he's had months to hide assets, and he's been very thorough." We discussed strategy for nearly 2 hours. Diana recommended filing for an emergency divorce petition citing abandonment, adultery, and financial misconduct. She also suggested seeking a temporary restraining order based on the threatening nature of his financial actions. "We'll need to move quickly," she explained. "His plan to empty the accounts next week, Suggests he's in the final stages of his exit strategy. I signed the necessary paperwork paying Diana's retainer from my personal savings. It was expensive, but as she pointed out, I couldn't afford not to have good legal representation given what I was up against. After leaving Diana's office, I picked up Eric's repaired phone from Jake, who refused to accept payment. After what happened, it's the least I can do, he insisted. Have you taken steps to protect yourself? I nodded, telling him about the locks, the bank accounts, the lawyer. Good, he said, relief evident in his voice. Too many people freeze or delay when they discover something like this. By acting quickly, you've already disrupted his plans. Jake helped me download and back up all the evidence from Eric's phone to a secure cloud account that Diana could access. As I was leaving, he asked hesitantly, "Will you be okay alone tonight? Do you have someone who can stay with you?" I assured him my sister would be coming over, touched by his concern. That evening, Julia arrived with overnight bags and groceries. We were sitting in the kitchen drinking tea when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Looking through the window, I saw Eric getting out of an Uber, his face set in a thunderous expression. "He's here," I told Julia, my heart racing. "He's supposed to be in Seattle with her." "He must have found out the phone was being repaired," Julia said, grabbing her phone. "I'm staying right here with you. If he gets aggressive, I'm calling 911. The front door rattled as Eric tried his key, followed by loud knocking. "Marisol, open the door. What the hell is going on?" His voice was harsh, nothing like the man I thought I had married. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the door. Through the peephole, I could see Eric's distorted face, rage evident in his expression. "The locks are changed," I said through the door. "And I know everything, Eric. About Diane, about Seattle, about the baby, about the money you've been stealing from me." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then his voice lowered to a threatening tone. "You had no right to go through my private phone. Open this door now so we can discuss this like adults." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I've spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from her tomorrow." "You stupid bitch," he hissed, all pretense gone. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Years of planning ruined because you couldn't mind your own business." His words confirmed everything. This wasn't a mistake, a misunderstanding, or a momentary lapse of judgment. This was who Eric truly was, a man capable of years of calculated deception. "I've secured the bank accounts," I told him, "and I have copies of everything, the photos, the emails, the letters to Diane. You're not getting away with this." Eric began pounding on the door, the wood shaking with the force of his blows. "Open this fucking door. This is my house too. You can't keep me out." Julia was already on the phone with emergency services. "My sister's husband is trying to break into her house," she explained. "He's becoming violent." Eric must have heard her because his next threat came clearly through the door. "You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of. When I'm done with you, you'll have nothing, no house, no money, not even your precious reputation at that school." The security camera at our front door was capturing everything, another piece of evidence for Diana. The situation escalated when Eric began shouldering the door, the frame creaking under the assault. Julia and I retreated to the kitchen, grabbing knives for protection. "The police are 3 minutes away," Julia said, her voice shaking. The sound of breaking glass from the living room sent us into panic mode. Eric had smashed the window beside the front door and was reaching in to unlock it. "Get upstairs," I told Julia. "Lock yourself in the bedroom and don't come out." "I'm not leaving you," she insisted. As Eric pushed open the door, his face contorted with rage, I stood my ground in the hallway. "Get out of my house," I demanded. "The police are on their way." "This is my house," he snarled, advancing toward me. "Everything you have is because of me. You're nothing without me, just a pathetic art teacher with delusions of talent." When he lunged for me, I raised the knife defensively. Eric grabbed my wrist, twisting until I cried out in pain and dropped the weapon. His other hand closed around my throat, pushing me against the wall. "You've ruined everything," he growled, his face inches from mine. "Years of planning destroyed because you couldn't keep your nose out of my business." Julia screamed, rushing at Eric with her phone. "I'm recording everything," she shouted. Let her go. Eric released me to turn on Julia, shoving her hard. She fell, hitting her head against the corner of a table. The sight of my sister bleeding on the floor, something snapped inside me. I grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the hallway table and swung it at Eric's head. It connected with a sickening thud, sending him staggering backward. Before he could recover, the wail of police sirens filled the air and flashing lights illuminated the broken window. 2 officers burst through the open door, weapons drawn. "Police, everyone freeze!" Eric, blood streaming from a cut on his temple, immediately adopted a different persona. "Thank God you're here," he said, his voice suddenly calm and reasonable. "My wife is having some kind of breakdown. She attacked me when I came home from a business trip." But Julia was already showing the officers the video she had recorded on her phone, and I quickly explained about the evidence of his double life. When one officer looked through Eric's phone with his permission, believing it would exonerate him, the officer's expression changed. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put your hands behind your back," he said, reaching for his handcuffs. "You're under arrest for domestic assault and breaking and entering." "This is ridiculous," Eric protested as he was handcuffed. "This is my house. You can't arrest me for entering my own property." "The locks were changed and you broke a window to gain entry," the officer explained calmly. "That constitutes breaking and entering regardless of whose name is on the deed, and we have video evidence of you assaulting your wife." As Eric was led to the police car, he looked back at me with pure hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over," he warned, "not by a long shot." After giving our statements to the police, Julia and I sat in the kitchen, shell-shocked. An EMT had bandaged the cut on her head, assuring us it looked worse than it was. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered, looking around the home that had felt so safe just 24 hours ago. "Yesterday morning I thought I had a loving husband and a perfect marriage. Now I'm filing for divorce and he's been arrested for assaulting me." Julia took my hand across the table. "You're not alone," she said firmly. "We'll get through this together." But as the adrenaline wore off, the full weight of my situation crashed down on me. My marriage was over. My financial security was compromised. My entire future had been derailed. And the man I had loved for a decade, the man I had planned to have children with, was a stranger capable of breathtaking cruelty. I put my head down on the kitchen table and sobbed until there were no tears left. The weeks following Eric's arrest were the darkest of my life. I moved through each day in a fog of disbelief and pain, functioning on autopilot. The beautiful home that had once been my sanctuary now felt tainted, filled with memories I couldn't escape, and questions that had no answers. I took a leave of absence from teaching, unable to focus on my students' needs when my own life was in shambles. My principal, Dr. Lowry, was understanding. "Take the time you need," she said. "Your position will be waiting when you're ready to return." The restraining order against Eric was granted immediately based on the assault and his threats. Diana, my attorney, moved quickly with the divorce proceedings, filing for emergency temporary support, given Eric's financial misconduct. The judge, appalled by the evidence of Eric's elaborate deception, froze all our marital assets pending a full accounting. Through Diana's investigative work, we discovered that Eric's betrayal went even deeper than I had initially realized. Diane wasn't the first, she was simply the one he had chosen for his exit strategy. There had been others over the years, some just brief affairs, others more involved relationships. Most shocking was the revelation that Eric had been married before me, a fact he had never disclosed. His first wife, Andrea, lived in California. When Diana contacted her, Andrea's story was disturbingly similar to mine. Eric, using his middle name James, had systematically drained their assets before disappearing 8 months into their marriage. She had spent years trying to track him down to finalize their divorce and recover her money, eventually giving up when the legal fees exceeded what she might recover. "He's a predator," Diana explained gently. "A very sophisticated one. He finds women with good incomes, solid credit, and trusting natures. Then he builds a life with them while systematically preparing to take everything he can." This knowledge was both devastating and oddly relieving. The man I loved had never existed. I hadn't failed as a wife. I had been targeted by someone skilled in deception. The distinction didn't lessen the pain, but it helped me direct my anger outward rather than blaming myself. The financial picture was grim. Eric had managed to transfer or hide approximately $180,000 from our joint accounts. The mortgage was indeed 2 months behind with a foreclosure notice pending. My personal savings were dwindling rapidly between legal fees and basic living expenses. Meanwhile, Diane had disappeared from Seattle. The apartment was vacated, her social media accounts deleted. Diana suspected Eric had coached her on going underground once his plan was exposed. The pregnancy at least appeared to be real, based on medical records subpoenaed during the investigation. Through all this, I struggled with depression so deep, I sometimes couldn't get out of bed. Julia stayed with me for the first week, but eventually had to return to her own family. Amanda and other friends tried to help, bringing meals and offering support, but I often couldn't summon the energy to answer the door when they came by. My art studio. Once my sanctuary remained untouched. The thought of creating anything felt impossible. What was the point when my entire life had been a fiction? After 3 weeks of this existence, Julia arrived one morning unannounced, threw open my curtains and said firmly, "Enough, get dressed, we're going out." "I can't," I protested, pulling the covers over my head. "You can and you will," she insisted. "You have therapy at 11. She had scheduled an appointment with Dr. Nora Chen, a psychologist specializing in trauma and betrayal. I went reluctantly, expecting little help from talking about my situation. Dr. Chen surprised me. Rather than pushing me to discuss my feelings immediately, she gave me practical tools for managing the overwhelming emotions and panic attacks that had become daily occurrences. "Betrayal trauma is real," she explained. "What you're experiencing has neurological similarities to PTSD. Your brain is trying to reconcile the person you thought you knew with the reality you've discovered. The disconnect is profound." Over the following weeks, our sessions became a lifeline. Dr. Chen helped me understand that my depression wasn't weakness, it was a natural response to extraordinary circumstances. Gradually, with medication and therapy, I began to function again. I returned to teaching part-time, finding solace in my students' creativity and enthusiasm. Their concern for me was touching. The news of Eric's arrest had made local headlines and rumors had circulated. Rather than hiding the truth, I spoke briefly to my classes about going through a difficult personal situation and thanked them for their understanding if I seemed distracted. Their response was overwhelming. Students brought me handmade cards, offered to help organize art supplies after class, and showed a gentleness that moved me deeply. 17-year-old Zach, a talented but usually withdrawn student, stayed after class one day. "Ms. Alvarez," he said hesitantly, "my dad left us last year. My mom went through something like what you're going through. She's okay now. You will be too." His simple words, offered with such sincerity, broke through something in me. That evening, for the first time in nearly 2 months, I went into my studio and picked up a paintbrush. The image that emerged was dark, chaotic, painful, but it was something. I had created instead of merely surviving. The house went on the market not because Eric wanted to sell it secretly, but because I couldn't afford to keep it. The court ordered it sold, with proceeds to be held in escrow until the divorce was finalized. I found a small one-bedroom apartment near my school, a third-floor walk-up with good natural light for painting. Moving was both heartbreaking and freeing. Each item I packed represented a decision: what to keep from my old life, what to discard, what to sell. My sister and friends formed a packing party, helping me sort through 8 years of accumulated possessions. "What do you want to do with this?" Amanda asked, holding up my wedding album. I considered it for a moment. "Trash," I decided. "The memories aren't real." By summer, 5 months after the day at the phone repair shop, I had established a new routine. Teaching therapy, painting occasional social outings with friends who had stood by me. The divorce proceedings continued, complicated by Eric's continued attempts to hide assets and his refusal to cooperate from jail, where he remained after violating the restraining order multiple times. My artwork took on a new dimension, exploring themes of deception, revelation, and rebirth. Dr. Chen suggested submitting pieces to a local gallery's exhibition on transformation. And to my surprise, all three of my submissions were accepted. The opening night of the exhibition marked a turning point. Standing beside my paintings explaining my process to visitors, I felt a flicker of my old self returning not unchanged, but perhaps stronger in the broken places. Jake, the phone technician, whose intervention had changed everything, attended the exhibition after seeing a flyer at a coffee shop. "These are powerful," he said, studying my largest piece, a dark canvas gradually giving way to light with shattered glass motifs throughout. "They should be," I replied. "They cost me a marriage and nearly my sanity." Jake smiled. "But not your talent, or your future." We talked throughout the evening, his genuine interest in my work and recovery a balm to my still healing spirit. Before leaving, he asked if I might want to get coffee sometime. I surprised myself by saying yes. 1 year after the discovery, my life had taken on a new shape. The divorce was finalized, with Eric serving time for financial fraud, as well as the assault. The court awarded me 60% of our recovered assets, though much of the money he had hidden was never found. I was appointed head of the art department at Westfield, a position that came with additional responsibilities, but also a welcome salary increase. My small apartment had become a true home filled with new memories and none of the ghosts that had haunted the house. The exhibition led to others, with my work receiving positive reviews and modest sales. I found my artistic voice changing, moving beyond the trauma into more nuanced explorations of resilience and authenticity. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, sharing my story with others experiencing relationship trauma. Helping these women recognize warning signs and rebuild their lives gave purpose to my painful experience. Jake and I developed a friendship that slowly evolved into something more, a cautious, honest relationship built on transparency and respect. Unlike the whirlwind romance with Eric, this connection grew gradually, each of us sharing our histories and fears openly. On the anniversary of the day at the phone shop, I received an unexpected email from Diane, Eric's pregnant girlfriend. She had given birth to a son and had eventually come forward to cooperate with the prosecution. "I was deceived too," she wrote. "He told me he was divorced, that his ex-wife had taken everything from him. I believed I was helping someone who had been wronged, never imagining I was participating in wronging someone else. I'm sorry for my part in your pain, however unwitting it was." Reading her words, I felt the last piece of my healing click into place. The anger I had harbored toward her dissolved, replaced by compassion for another of Eric's victims. That evening, I completed a self-portrait, my first since the divorce. Looking at the finished canvas, I saw someone I recognized, but also someone new, stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The eyes that looked back at me had seen darkness, but weren't defined by it. The lessons I learned through this journey were hard-won. I discovered that trusting my instincts isn't paranoia, it's self-preservation. That starting over, while terrifying, can be an opportunity to build something more authentic. That while we can't control others' actions, we can control our response to betrayal. Most importantly, I learned that healing isn't about forgetting or even forgiveness necessarily. It's about reclaiming your narrative, your power, your future. The broken pieces of my life didn't go back together the same way. They formed something entirely new, with the cracks visible but filled with gold, like the Japanese art of kintsugi. The trust I lost in others has been replaced by trust in myself, in my resilience, my judgment, my worth beyond any relationship. And that perhaps is the most valuable outcome of all. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with you, trust that feeling. The red flags I ignored might be waving in your own life. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something wasn't right in your relationship? Did you listen to it or push it aside? Share your experiences in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe if this story helped you in any way. Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey.